from Toronto to Timmins. They are part of a coalition of over 60 organizations of Pride festivals across Ontario. They are asking this government to create a dedicated Pride fund with a small investment of $1.5 million annually for 3 years. This modest request represents less than 1% of the taxable revenue that Toronto Pride generates for government coffers each year. Will the Premier establish this Pride Fund and make it available to these organizations before Pride Month in June?
Minister of Tourism.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And thank you to the member opposite for that question. I know this is a very important issue for the member, and I deeply respect the Pride community and what they offer, the great mosaic that is Ontario. Of course, the community enriches our community and increases tourism. We know that, and that's why since 2018, our government has invested in Toronto Pride specifically with funding of nearly $2 million. In fact, when you look at last year's funding for Pride festivals, 9 festivals were funded to the tune of nearly $500,000. And Speaker, through Experience Ontario or through the great Minister of Multiculturalism, we are continuing to fund. In fact, that minister, the Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, announced $25.5 million over 2 years to make sure that faith and cultural communities, including the Pride community, have safe and secure places to practice their faith, showcase their culture, and of course celebrate who they are. Speaker, this government will continue to support the great Pride community here in Ontario.
I recognize the member for London North Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. And to the Minister, he would know that Pride organizations are not eligible for the security funding that he has just cited. Speaker, my question is to the Premier. Of the more than 60 Prides in Ontario each year, most are small, volunteer-run events in towns like Timmins and Sioux Lookout, the only 2 LGBTQIA+ organizations in their communities. These Prides aren't expensive, but artists, spaces, and permits still cost money. Small and rural Prides save lives and ease the burden on our mental health care system. They generate well over $500 million to Ontario's GDP. Through you, Speaker, to the Premier, will you release $1.5 million today to ensure Prides, big and small, across Ontario can continue supporting their communities?
Back to the Minister for response.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And look, we on both sides of the House agree that the Pride community is, of course, an important community in Ontario. That's why this government has been there in 8 years of being elected, supporting these festivals with $2.5 million in investments for festivals, not just in Toronto, in every corner of this province. I mean, look, we're a big province. We can fit 14 European countries in here, and Pride communities are important in every single corner of Ontario. That's why we continue to fund these festivals to the tune of millions of dollars, as I just said in my first answer. But, Speaker, the reality is we need both sides of the bench to be, when cameras are off, just as equally supported. Before us, we have a budget bill that includes those supports once again for the Pride community. The members need to vote for that, not just when the cameras are on through their words, but also when the cameras are off and we're doing what's most important in this legislation and voting for this festival. Let's continue to support Pride community.